And we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. I'll be your host for the night in the Anyone Can Farm live chat. This is our Thursday night show, which we bring folks in that we think you will find to be interesting. And tonight we have Lisa Jendza with us from the Freedom Kitchen. And I met Lisa about 6 months ago, and it was in a similar situation where we did an interview, and she interviewed me, and I talked all about what I'm doing. And I hope at the time I remained humble, and I said that, well, I'm just taking it as it comes. I don't really remember, and I never did watch the interview. I'm famous for that. But then Lisa and I met up again this weekend here at Baker's. We had a canning workshop, and Lisa came all the way from the big city, Detroit, the big D, to come up here with three of her associates, all very nice ladies. And we had a great time. I think the dynamic was just completely different than what we're used to. And so Lisa, I just caught up with her a little bit, and this is a different duck, you guys. This is the type of person that you hear about that wades way into the deep end of corporate America and then has an event happen. Yeah. Has a come to Jesus moment and lets it go. And so huge sacrifice Lisa made to create the Freedom Kitchen. And I think we're really, we might be interviewing the next, Donald Trump type person here, because in my opinion, this is a huge career field that's coming online, and it has to do with homesteading, small farms, local food, self-sufficiency. I was just telling Lisa, we see people all the time now that are driving Denali's coming in the yard here and wanting to learn more about homesteading. So it's coming whether we like it or not. Real quick, Lisa, I'm just going to read your bio, and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
And we'll want to hear your side of things, how this all happened to you. But all right, here it goes. A dynamic change agent and business guru, Lisa Jendza cut her teeth in the business world with General Motors and EDS, leaving a successful career with Hewlett-Packard after 25 years, leaving comfort to follow her calling. After a decade of teaching holistic health, Lisa could clearly see a need to gather in the kitchen with like-minded individuals to influence a new food ecosystem. Being in the kitchen symbolizes taking care of oneself. It is how we nourish and show love to others. Lisa's classes always end up in the kitchen. Students of Lisa's programs have said it has set them free. Amen to that. And freedom is her life's purpose. Freedom Kitchen transcends time and space to offer cooking classes to those ready to eat real food. It is a place for health enthusiasts to gather. Lisa has owned a wellness spa, co-founded a commercial kitchen cooking school, and is the business coach and health coach. If our health is our greatest wealth, then freedom starts in the kitchen. Well said. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. That's probably a great place to start, right? I remember our first conversation when I said, I'm a very deep thinker, and I've come to realize that our freedom begins and ends in the kitchen. So our freedom is influenced by the choices that we make every day. And we think those are the big choices or the big decisions, but they're actually the small choices. And if we look at who owns the 36,000 brands of food in the grocery store, which is held by 10 companies, and at the very top, it's BlackRock and Vanguard, who also control the agricultural chemicals and the pharmaceutical chemicals, they're controlling the food. And so therefore they're controlling us. And then, I also encourage people to think the food in the grocery stores on the shelves is meant to give a return on Wall Street. It's not meant to contribute to your health. So I tell everyone to look before they get angry. Look at your 401k, look at your mutual funds, because if you're investing in those companies, then you've hired them to give you a return on Wall Street. You haven't hired them for the health of your family.
Right.
And so this is where we went askew. We've made a lot of assumptions along the way that everything is in our best interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm all about freedom.
Okay. Can you tell us, please, about your background when you were in the corporate world, where that started, what your mindset was, wading in? I'm sure you thought you were doing the right thing. And then please tell us about your revelation when you decided to walk away from that, which is profound.
Yeah, I interned at General Motors when I was 17, and I hired into EDS right out of high school at 18. So I have 25 years with GM, EDS, and Hewlett-Packard when I resigned. And that decision was not easily made. And often I look in the rearview mirror, wondering if I made the right decision. But so I come at this from a different perspective. I was in IT when information technology was the wild, wild west. So the Ross Perot days, we were creating the plane while we were flying it. I mean, those commercials were like so true. And so Ross Perot really taught us that we needed to understand the whole system. And we had the ability to make the best decision in the moment. So it wasn't really bureaucratic. People thought Ross Perot was really strict. He was military. So, we wore navy blue suits. But I always say it was structured entrepreneurship because we were really empowered to do whatever we needed to do in the moment. Over time, as they pushed Ross Perot out and we became more corporate, GM assigned a new CEO, and eventually we moved towards being acquired by HP, I watched us become compartmentalized. You only do switches, you only do routers, you only do the backbone, you only do change control, you do operations, everything. And at one point I had the largest metropolitan area network in the world for the GM truck group. And I was the account manager and the operations manager. And I had, both the project team and the ops team, and everyone was cross-trained. And over time, everyone became compartmentalized. And what I saw was this has become an assembly line. This is how they could then start taking functions and offshoring them because they had compartmentalized people. And then over time, it got worse because I started to see the slap on the hand or the shot collar if you did something outside of your area. That's not your responsibility. You don't have any authority to do that. Then it got even more bureaucratic to where if you weren't a director, you couldn't call another director. And that was not the way Ross Perot created that company. We had an open door policy at all times. And by the time we became HP, it was so bureaucratic, we couldn't get anything done. But what it showed me, so in parallel to this, I had a health crisis. And so I had been having wrist pain since the age of 24, and they had me in wrist braces for carpal tunnel. At age 26, my ankles hurt chronically every day. They told me to take Advil. They were planning surgery for my wrists and telling me to take Advil for my ankles. And then other things started to ache, my hips and my shoulders. And they're like, that's not related. And I thought, is this not all connected to the same body?
Yeah.
And so what I started to see in IT with us being compartmentalized, I saw in the medical community. It's an assembly line and it's compartmentalized. And so nobody's looking at the whole. So having a background in network operations, I had to get to root cause. If I had a network outage, especially if the assembly line went down or a manufacturing plant went down, like I had to have root cause analysis. What caused it to happen so it doesn't happen again? Mm-hmm. And I thought, why doesn't the medical community have to do root cause analysis? They're not getting to the root cause of my issues. And I started to look around, Mark, and that's when that was probably my first big epiphany, was the whole world had blinders on.
Yeah.
So now when you go to the bank and you talk to someone, they say, that's not my department. That's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not what they tell me. Then you go to the supermarket. Used to be you could talk to anyone at the grocery store, but now, oh, that's not my department. That's not my responsibility. And I thought, everybody has blinders on.
Yeah.
And worse, they've been given a shot collar and told to stay in line.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions. You stay in your lane. So as I moved into corporate audit and consulting, I was in regional productivity. So they would send me into underperforming accounts to turn them around. And I've always been a curious person. I ask a lot of questions. Like, I probably bug the crap out of you and Jill with all the questions I ask, because I ask a lot of questions. And it probably comes from, in childhood, I was given up for adoption and I never knew why. So my favorite question in life is why. But why? But why would we do that? So I ask a lot of questions, and I ended up in regional productivity, and I thought, nobody can critically think anymore. When I go into an account and I ask, why is it done this way? And they say, well, it's always been done this way. That's not a good answer.
Right.
And it made me start questioning more and more, what has happened to us that we don't have the ability to critically think? Do we not have the ability, or are we fearful, or maybe a little bit of both? And so I ended up having an existential health crisis. I had type 2 diabetes. My triglycerides were 300. I was told I was a heart attack waiting to happen at 36 because,
Wow.
I worked around the clock. I worked 80 to 120 hours a week. And all those years in network operations, my pager went off anytime, day or night. And I might have to work, 36 hours straight until the network was up. So all those years of stress and cortisol, and I was a smoker, and we ate out 7 days a week because I didn't have time to cook or the energy to cook. So I raised my kids on fast food and junk food. And so I ended up with type 2 diabetes, fibromyalgia, and had to change everything. And it was when I cleaned up my diet, I started detoxing, and all of a sudden I could think more clearly, like this brain fog lifted. Yeah. And I thought, this is what's happened to everybody. I think they all have brain fog. So I started teaching. That would have been about 2007 or 8. And so I would say I had a couple mystical experiences in there, and I would call them mystical because they just were like out of the realm of logic, that I was able to put some of these things together. And then some of it even came in, dreams and a feeling that I had that there was something more, so after getting a promotion and getting, the corner cube where I had a view of the parking lot, I thought,
wow, lucky you.
I thought, is this what I've been striving for? Is this what I've sacrificed all my time with my kids over, is so that I could view the parking lot, just so I could have the double cube? And, so there were enough things that happened in there for me to take pause and notice and say, maybe there's another way. Mm-hmm. And, maybe I was a little ignorant in like jumping out on my own because I was so successful in corporate America, but being self-employed is totally different. But I feel this sense that we need to find a new way. And it's becoming clearer to me what God's been telling me, because I have heard it so loud and clear. And I'll look at my husband as I get messages and I say, we're supposed to be in the food and water business. God says we're supposed to be in the food and water business, but I don't want to be in the food and water business. Yeah. So, I've been arguing with God for the last decade. And now I think what the intent is. And the intent is to take my IT and my systems knowledge, looking at systems, and help influence a new food ecosystem. Because we can't change the current system from within the system. You can't ever change the system from within the system. You have to stand up a new system.
Right.
So that's where I am today.
That's fairly consistent with what we found. The only approach is to create a parallel to what isn't working, and don't use any of those subsystems that aren't not working. Throw them out. And one of the things that they've really been good at is centralization. So, a decentralized food system. I mean, we came out of a decentralized food system into a centralized food system. And do you know why? It sounds like you understand this. Why did we go to a centralized food system in the first place?
I think we were convinced it was economies of scale, that all of this was, even in IT, when we're looking at systems, we look at what can we centralize, because you're looking at what can you leverage. So it's really the same thing. If I'm looking at a decentralized food system, I'm still looking at what can I leverage. This is where we lack the resources. This is really what frustrates me, is because at this point, with all the centralization, they've amassed all of the resources. And so now we're looking at, where are our levers? What can we leverage? Well, the only thing we can leverage is each other. Like, you and I can leverage each other, and the resources you have are the resources I have.
Yeah.
But we have to now come up with leverage points. And so that's how we were convinced, even in IT, because that's what I did, is I helped consolidate systems and information processing, because it was supposed to give us economies of scale. And, and I've heard you say this in other interviews, that greed. So a lot of this does come down to greed. And so I keep, in check in myself, like, what's efficiency versus greed? Because we need to be efficient, which is why, like, my standard mode of operation is, like, there's a book called The Goal. If you go to college and for business or accounting, like, you'll have to read this book, and it is a great book. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking at the system. Like, how can we deliver that? Like, where's the leverage? Because we have to have efficiency. But how we ended up all centralized was, I'm sure they played on greed. It's cheaper and more efficient for us to centralize everything.
Yeah, and then it seems like a few at the top can take a lion's share of the profits. It seems like.
Well, yeah, when I started in corporate America, I mean, okay, we're going back to the 80s now, going back a long way, but CEOs were paid $1 million. Now they're paid $36 million to leave. Yeah. We're like, you did a bad job. Here's your golden parachute. Leave. $36 million. I mean, we paid CEOs to leave EDS and HP who totally messed up the company. One was accused of sexual assault, and we paid him $25 million to leave. Yeah. Like, there's something wrong, because I watched that in just a 20-year span. I watched that gap widen and widen. And so something is wrong when they're taking that big of a cut at the top. So when I left HP, the top 5 officers were making $250 million. Oh. But my job in regional productivity was to save us money. So here I'm, like, working really hard to save, $6 million here, $18 million there, for them to offshore this group or that group. And then but the top 5 officers were making $250 million,
Yeah. That's where you get into that spiritual aspect of it. It's the blatant insanity right in your face. It's a spiritual thing, because it creates a feeling in the human of despondency, I think. Like, for the average guy, the difference between 5 million and 25 million, I mean, you can't spend either one of them, I don't suppose. But what are these people doing with all this money? I don't know. It's just way out there. It's just way out there. All right. Well, I can see that there's similarities between the corporate world and the food world. All right. Agriculture, for sure. For sure. The centralization, the compartmentalization, big time. Nobody really sees the big picture. Okay, so what we from your point of view, is there a fix in the corporate world? What would the fix be, or is there no fix?
So I might be a little bit cynical at this age.
Yeah,
And um,
that's wisdom.
I, you know, law of attraction, like the law of gravity, is
Okay.
about energy. It's just energy and frequency. And law of attraction says that what we give attention to, we give energy to. And so even just to think about something, we send it energy. And so in law of attraction, the teachings are if we want something to go away, we suffocate it.
Okay.
So you withdraw your energy from it. So I'm kind of on a new mission to teach health coaches, other professionals like me, stop giving attention to the broken system because we just continue to feed it energy. And my energy is just way too precious for that.
Okay.
So I need to start thinking about what is it that I want to create? What do I want to see in the world? And that's what I need to think about, talk about, promote, because where my attention goes is where my energy goes. I
Okay.
personally don't think that we can change this massive system, but I think there's enough of us that want a different system. And I think we just start to work amongst each other and slowly, probably the rest of my lifetime, maybe my kid's lifetime, we'll start to see this new system emerge. I just have to temper my expectations.
Okay. Okay. Um, I may have been in this a little bit longer than you, and I am hearing myself coming from you. I'm hearing, there was a time when I felt like I got to tell everybody so we can change this for everybody. So we can all have a good thing, a better thing. But it took me a while before I realized, there's people right now that are in industrial agriculture in my community here that are loving what they're doing, and they're still challenged by it. And they whenever they smell that rotten smell of manure that they spread all over the place, they'll say, "I smell money." They love it. And so they really don't want anything to do with what we're doing. And I have to be okay with that and just say, well, for those of you that want to come with us, here's what we're offering. And as I told you Saturday, we've gotten to the point where we feel like the most you can do is to um, train people and talk with them, spend time with them. And I had a guy call me today. He's supposed to come and buy some pigs from me last week, and he got hung up. And 24 years old, expecting his first child, and him and his wife have been following videos that Joe puts up and that Jill puts up and things. And they've said, that's the life that we want for our son. That's the life that we want for him. And he said to me, he said, your videos have taken the unsurety out of it. And I thought that was really interesting that he said that because being 24 years old, he came up in the relatively the same school system that we have now. Um, there's a level of, hey, this is a sure thing. Go this direction. It's a sure thing. And he picked a career field, and his wife picked him because he was in that career field probably, or a compilation of reasons. But and then he says, no, I want to get into farming. And she says, oh, I don't know. I'm unsure of that. And it it just shows me another facet that's been promoted to the public about food production and homesteading and self-sufficiency, that it's really, there's a lot of unsurety out there when it comes to that, and it's kind of funny because that side of the fence, they always seem to accuse the other side of what they're guilty of, right?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
the food system now is kind of looking a little shaky to me. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you bring that up because, I would say 15 years ago when I started speaking and teaching, so I bought my wellness spa in 2008. So I
okay.
was preparing to leave or change in 2007. That's when I was cleaning up my life. And then 2008, I bought a wellness spa, and I heard very clearly we need to detox. Like, I needed to detox myself, but we needed to detox the world. And so here I was teaching detoxification, getting more and more frustrated because I felt like nobody heard me. And, 2007 or 8, people just weren't really ready to hear that. Now, I knew something was coming. I felt it. When COVID hit, I'm like, this is why you wanted me to tell people to detox. I get it.
Mhm.
But they didn't all listen. I would say that in my early days of speaking and teaching, there was an immaturity I call it, an immature coach. And I felt it was my job to convince people. And the harder I tried, I think the more people tuned me out. I probably sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, wah, wah. So they just tuned me out. It took a substantial amount of time. I would say 8 to 10 years. I mean, I've only gotten to this in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, where I don't need to convince anyone anymore. I see that the chasm is getting wider. There are people who are awake and there are people who are not.
Yeah.
There are people who want the old systems. There are people who are looking for new systems, and that's across the board, right? We're seeing people look for new financial systems or financial vehicles like crypto and EFT, NFTs, whatever those things are. We see people looking for new school systems. We see people looking for new food supplies. So there's definitely a change, and we have 2 different levels of consciousness on this planet. And that's necessary, I think, for our evolution. I think we need the friction of that. So at least that's how I get through each day right now, is because, we all have friction in our families right now, for sure. If you don't, God bless you. I don't know, because I think most of us have friction in our families. But it's that, that coal that makes the diamond. And so I think we need this friction right now. But this is going to be probably the rest of our lifetime. And so the things that I'm trying to create, like you're doing with my summits, my events, my cooking classes, is I'm leaving a breadcrumb trail, so that as people are awake or they're searching and they say, I just wish I understood, why my child has ADD, ADHD, or what do dyes have to do with it, or what does Whole Foods look like? I'm trying to leave a breadcrumb trail. And I think there's a spectrum of waking up to what processed food has done to us, and just moving to real food and taking our power back by getting back in our kitchen, to then moving towards homesteading. And so just like you, I've matured a bit. Sometimes I might still yell from the rooftops because I still work with the public. So I'm working with kids and families in the community. And there's days really that just break my heart. I really cry when I see the number of kids that are suffering, and how many people are in denial that our kids are suffering, which is why we did that 4-part docuseries on what has food done to our kids.
Yeah, I with this audience, a lot of times I use that. What would you call it? I talked about it on Saturday to you all about the Titanic, and it's hit the iceberg. It's taken on water, but there's still people that are saying, "Hey, wait a minute! I got one more drink coming." And if you can see the big picture, then you'll say, oh, forget that drink, forget my luggage, just get in the lifeboat. And I was able to do that a long time ago. And I've told my audience this story many times, but it all started with something that we all kind of knew about, and it was that the siege at Waco. I was watching that real time, and I just said, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. And from that point on, I had a pastor at the time that said, yeah, I don't think that's right either. And we just kept looking into it, and we found out a lot of really nasty stuff about it. And then from that point on, I just looked at things closer. And the food situation has always been suspect to me, because they take real food and they shrink it down into something that looks funny but tastes good, and it fools you, and it just doesn't look good overall to me. So I'm really with you on that. But Let's see. I've got some questions here. Do you want to add on to that?
Well, I will say most people still find processed food innocuous because they say our government wouldn't allow something that was unhealthy to be on the grocery store shelves. So I believe where this comes from, Mark, is guilt and shame are the lowest vibration or frequency that we can feel as a human. And so if I feel like I wronged my children, that I wasn't a good mom because I fed them processed foods, then my survival depends on me being in denial. Because to admit that or to feel the depth of that pain or grief of that failure could crush me. And so this is where I say, this is a judgment-free zone when people work with me. I raised my kids on fast food and junk food because I prioritized my career. And so I have a lot of empathy for where people are at. I understand why they would say, it can't be that bad. They sell it at Kroger.
Right.
And I knew it was bad because as I got myself off processed foods, all of my health issues cleared up. And people started saying to me, and if I were to put the picture up, you'd be in shock. From the age of 36 to 37, I looked 10 years younger. I mean, I don't even look like the same person. In the 1 year that I detoxed, I looked like a totally different person. I look better at 50 than I did at 37. And people were saying to me, what did you do? I'm like, I just started eating real food. Like I just stopped eating anything out of a package. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about now teaching the kids, because I don't even want them to get to that point. And we've raised them all on this. This is the first generation, my kids' generation was the first generation to be raised on some of this stuff. And when you start looking into it, it is disgusting what they have done to manipulate us and manipulate the food. But again, I'm not judging a parent for buying it or serving it. I'm saying I'm expressing empathy to say, come with me.
Yeah.
Let's grieve together. Let's heal, and then let's move towards something better.
Yeah. You're in the business of leading people out of that, because it's a really personal thing.
And it is really addictive. I have a book here. I brought a few books in here. So this book here, Processed Food Addiction. Dr. Joan Ifland there's hundreds and hundreds of studies cited in here. So this is all very scientific. This is a textbook. And what she has been able to determine is that addiction to processed food is no different than addiction to drug or alcohol or any other addictive substance. Like this says, the neurodysfunction in addiction and overeating as assessed by brain imaging. And so she gets into the neural pathways in the brain and what happens when we eat these foods. So they really need to get this in the DSM-5 as an addiction. But, as soon as that happens, then there'll be a drug for it. But it's truly an addiction. And that, again, is why there is no judgment here when I'm talking about this. I'm truly just offering my hand for support.
So do you think that if we choose to go a different path, that we would be unrestricted to go this different path?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I know you think we can probably chart that course. I think that there will be roadblocks. So I say that because wherever we try to consolidate resources is where I'm sure there will be interference. Now, I know that you're working on like protecting a homestead and doing our own thing, but I still think that when it comes to processing facilities, and that's what we're seeing, right? So Neath Valley with their food church, I know Derek and Paige had trouble getting their meat processed. My mom's cousin raises my meat. She couldn't get anything processed during COVID. So I still think that there's probably enough places where there can be interference.
Enough. We call them choke points, and
Okay. Yeah.
I brought that into the food world with me from the military. Your enemies will always look for choke points, places where there's a bunch of people that have to get through an area, and that's a good target. And it seemed to me that processing, they'd created choke points with processing because USDA is the one that took over processing and said, we will inspect it from here on out. And their logo started showing up every place, and it isn't really necessary, but the way they've got it set up, it became necessary. And so this is why we've brought the anyone can farm into this, is because they, in my defense, okay, in my defense, they are mercenary, right? They are doing this, and they are part of the corporate world that you were part of, and they're vying for the corner office. That's it. They don't get paid good, and they're eating the funny food as well. So that's why I don't think that they're a viable opponent in this war, in the food war. I don't, because they're eating the same damn food that they want us to eat. And when we just don't eat it and we become, clear of mind and spirit, I just think
I don't know if that's true at the very top, though. At the very top, they're using homeopathy. They're not using these pharmaceutical drugs. They're using naturopathy and homeopathy, and I'm pretty sure that they're probably eating pasture raised red meat. I mean, but I'm talking at the top, not the minions.
Yeah.
This plant-based movement now has me terrified, and I lean vegetarian. So again, this is not a judgment, and I believe everyone has to choose the diet that's right for their body. And I've coached a lot of people. Some people need more meat, some people need less.
Yeah.
I have just always naturally gravitated towards vegetarian, not sure why, but I started losing bone density and muscle mass. And again, this was another like epiphany for me that I probably can't grow old on plants. And I started feeling this gravitational pull to eating more meat, even though I would prefer not to. I have been. And there's something about this propaganda that's going on about plant-based everything that should be enough to wake people up. If they really want you to be plant-based, I believe that's just another way to weaken us.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't a judgment. I'm not going to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't eat, but I am saying you have to become discerning about what you're eating and also become aware of the propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we had a conversation at lunch today, and Joel came up, Joel Salatin came up, and one of my younger kids said, "What's the USDA anyway?" And I said, "Oh, it's the US duh," like Joel. And there's talk out there in the Patriot community about certain entities going away, like the FBI going away, and the Federal Reserve going away. And if you listen to certain mystics, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, they've already gone away." But I don't know it should matter to us, because when the MDA or the USDA says, "Hey, this is what you want to do," well, you take everything they say with a grain of salt, but usually it's about 180 degrees out. If they say you need to be on a plant-based diet, you probably ought to be on a meat-based diet. And I bet you in your case, you've been pummeled with that your whole life, almost to the point where when you eat a steak, you feel kind of guilty about it because, I should be eating more vegetables here. When that's not really, I don't think that, I just know in my own life, when I went on a carnivore diet, what a difference it made in my life. I was really healthy before, but I kind of became, I just way better, even my hands were tougher, stronger. I didn't react to the cold. I didn't react to the heat like I had. I just had way more tolerance to everything, stronger than I have ever been in my life at age 60, which I don't know. I never really did hit the weight bench to see, but I just feel like I can move things that I couldn't move before. And I'm willing to try to move stuff that before I would be like, hey, why don't you guys move that because I'm old, So
Yeah, I
I'm,
think
I'm
that there's no, I think that there's a valid point there, and I still teach plant forward classes when it comes to teaching kids, but the purpose of my classes are a little bit different. Although I tell them all the time, you guys can make this with meat at home. I'm just teaching you how to make something. And part of the reason I don't use meat in my classes is because I have too many little hands coming into the classroom, and I don't want to have to worry about raw meat and sticky fingers. But I always tell them, you guys should be eating meat at home. And again, I really am trying to teach the kids. So the whole purpose of my class is empowerment. And I really found over time, so I was a coach helping people my age. I was helping middle-aged women reclaim their health. That's who kind of walked through my doors at my spa. Now, I had a misconception. I believed that if mom got healthy, the whole family got healthy. A lot of people would assume that. And over time, I found my clients saying to me, oh no, I cook a separate meal for myself. My family would never eat this healthy stuff. And I was like, what? And then even my empty nester clients were telling me, I did what you said, Lisa. I cleaned out my pantry. They take pictures, send it to me. Look, I cleaned all this crap out of my pantry, all this crap. And I called my kids and said, come pick it up. And I'm like, it's crap. Why'd you give it to your kids? So it was a matter of circumstance that I ended up teaching kids. I never set out to teach kids. Again, God put them in my path. And what I found was really remarkable. When I started talking to the kids about different ingredients, and I explained to them, like, this is food dyes. These are chemicals. We don't need to have food dyes. And look, if we really want pink frosting, we can use like dragon fruit powder. You can use freeze-dried raspberries. It'll turn your frosting pink. We don't need to use these chemicals. And so when I started having conversation, real conversation with them, enrolling them in the conversation, asking them questions, getting them to think, they're like, no one ever told us this before. No one ever told me what was healthy. Like, I want to eat healthy, but I don't really know what healthy is. And so the kids are coming back to me saying, you're the best teacher I've ever had. In all my years of school, you're the best teacher. And I'm not even a teacher. And they said, because you don't tell us just to repeat something. You don't make us memorize stuff. You show us all of our options and you give us choices. And then ultimately you leave it up to us. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be there to feed you the rest of your life. So of course I'm leaving it up to you. but what good is it going to do me to make something right or wrong? Because that's a judgment. Now we go back into guilt and shame. You lower the frequency of the kids. Yeah. Well, now they're not even confident to make any decisions, right? But what we want to do is we want to build up their confidence so that they can be responsible. We want them to be personally responsible.
Yeah.
And so I'm really teaching them through food, and that, so a lot of my classes are still plant forward, plant-based, but it's the premise of what I'm teaching them. And then I just make it fun. I say, oh, we forgot the yellow food dye in our lemon meringue pie. And they all look around. They're like, we followed the recipe. And then they look at their pies and they're like, Miss Lisa, my pie is yellow. And I go, is it yellow enough? Because the food companies think it should be more yellow.
Yeah.
And then I have them read labels. And I'm like, look at these chemicals that they put in the lemon meringue pie. We didn't need any of those.
So where do you do these classes, and how do you get clients to come in the classes? What's the draw?
So I had a cafe in Oxford, Michigan. Okay. And the prior owner had been teaching classes for kids. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not teaching any classes for kids. And especially when I heard that she was still teaching like pizza and mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. I was like, oh, hell no. I hope I can say that on here.
Sure.
Because I was like, I will not continue to proliferate this misconception that this is what kids eat. If I'm going to teach these classes, then we're going to do classes my way. The kids may not like me very much, but we're making healthy food. And I honestly did not think that they liked me. You know, my first few weeks, especially the middle school, high schoolers, they don't really talk to you. And so I prayed one morning. I said, Dear God, please tell me if I'm getting through to these kids. You need to give me a sign. Just give me a sign today. I need something to keep me going. And we maybe about 4 or 5 weeks into the first semester I taught. And I had a high schooler, a senior, super quiet, never said much. She stayed after class. She said, can I stay after and ask you some questions? And she ended up being such a gift to me. And I told her that later. Her whole family, all of her siblings have come through my classes too. And she was the one who said, no other teacher has taught like you. You know, you're giving us options and you're giving us choices. And she had some questions because she was homeschooled and her parents believed a lot like me, which is not necessarily like the rest of the world. And she was trying to make sense of the world before she was going off to college. So we ended up to be very close. I absolutely just loved that family. So I get a homeschool group out of Oxford. That's how it started. And now I have some homeschool kids out of Holly, Fenton, Troy, mostly Michigan still. This summer I had 2 kids from Illinois, 2 from Texas, 2 from California. So it's growing.
Ooh, wow.
So I'm still teaching in person in Oxford. And then I also do an online class. So my classes are on Wednesdays. And it's really good because if a parent goes into a kitchen with their child, you're going to get some headbutting, right? Because you've got all the baggage of the parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
If the child drops an egg on the floor, you know, they're worried about their parent yelling at them. When they're just talking to me, even if I'm on a screen, you know, like I'm encouraging them on.
Yeah.
And we don't have that history of that, you know, parent-child relationship. So I can just be a coach and build them up. So I focus on courage, confidence, and creativity. That's what our world needs.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. Personal courage. We're lacking in it so badly. So badly.
Well, these kids have been taught to, you know, stand 6 feet apart on the dot on the floor. They're afraid not to stand on the circle.
Yeah. All right. And so these are these children, is this a school that you're charging the homeschool group for? I mean, you're being compensated for this. It's a business.
Yes.
And where do you think it can go?
Well, I see the trend towards homeschooling. And again, this was not a plan of mine. It was never like a business strategy. It was just sort of fell in my lap. And the kids have taught me so much. And I also see that nobody's teaching them.
Yeah.
So now I have found a couple other kids cooking programs and I love them, absolutely love them. But I go a little bit deeper into probably the knowledge. This isn't like how to use a box grater. This is like, where did your food come from? Is it in season? Is it local? Could you grow this yourself? Does this grow in pots? We have those types of conversations while we're making our food. And then I teach them how to become resourceful. What if I only have these ingredients? What could I do with these? How could I swap these out? So my class isn't just like, let's make a lemon meringue pie or let's make our own granola bars. I'm really teaching them critical thinking. I'm teaching them resourcefulness. They're learning what pantry staples are. They're learning how to be prepared for pandemic preparedness. And so I think the classes might continue to grow. I'm looking at a new app to put all the videos on that I've recorded so that kids everywhere can take my classes. And I'm looking to teach other health coaches or other homeschool associations where they can just purchase my curriculum and I'll train them. I think that there's some real important things that I would want to train them on before they start educating kids. But we got 30 million kids. I can't train them all.
Yeah. The subject of alternate schools has come up several times in the last couple of years, like building our own schools. And then one of the sticking points has been, yeah, but how are we going to staff this? I mean, yeah, some of the moms are really good, but a lot of them have little kids or other kids, and it just seems a bit tough to be able to rely on just the homeschool moms to be able to shoulder that load. And I wonder if in the years to come, or the months to come, or maybe the days to come, there'll be teachers for hire for
Yes.
homeschool associations. And I was trying to figure out how this was going to work, but all of a sudden it dawned on me. When we did our canning class, of course, there was a lot more that goes into that final trophy, that we would have. It's some really nice green beans or something in a can. A lot more went into that than met the eye. And some of the people that were here, they were just learning to do that end piece of it. It's sort of like this with homeschooling. At public school, we used to have home ec. I never had it. I went to a Catholic high school, all boys. So I never had home ec, but they did at the public school, but they don't have that anymore.
Correct.
So,
And so I was approached about that as well, about offering home ec classes, not just the cooking portion. And I didn't really feel that I was the best person for that. But I mean, I can definitely consult you on how this program does it. And they've set it up brilliantly to where they use businesses as community partners to be the teachers. Now I still have to go through and get the background check. I have to be fingerprinted because I'm working with the kids, obviously, but I'm not a direct employee of the school district, but the school district is the one that's paying me.
okay.
So they're paying me as a community vendor.
Huh.
So you find people that this is their expertise, and then you're leveraging their expertise and probably already some of their business expense, so we're not setting up an entirely new business for this. And then, we get paid tuition and I get a material fee as well. So tuition to cover my time, the curriculum, but I get a material fee only for the kids that come in person to cover the cost of all the food and really my insurance, the rent of the kitchen that I have, take home boxes, aprons, gloves, all that,
All right.
So that's the way we have it structured. But I can actually share some of that with you. And we talked a little bit about the one-room schoolhouse. My eyes have been open with the homeschool community. I probably had some misconceptions about homeschooling. I sent my kids to public school. So how would I know? I would only know what probably was the propaganda that homeschool kids were socially inept or, awkward. I don't know. I think I have those misconceptions. My daughter has those misconceptions as well. And that is not what I have found. I have found that the homeschool kids are more independent, free thinking. They are more well-versed. They communicate better. And I have taught public school kids in the evening and homeschool kids during the day. So I have, in one day, I can see homeschoolers and then public school kids. And there is a distinct difference. But the biggest difference I have found, and I hope this is heartwarming for everyone listening, because it was heartwarming for me. I get to take elementary school all together grades. I take grades 1 through 5, and then I can take middle school, high school together. I just can't take elementary with middle school, high school. And so, but I have kids ages like 6 to 10 or 11, and they will all help each other. And then my middle schoolers, I got grades 6 through 12, and it is amazing to me how they help each other. And especially if I have anyone with an IEP, like an individualized education plan for any type of learning disability, every child in the homeschool community will pitch in and help that child. They'll say, did you get a turn? Oh, come on over here. And I have them work in groups. there's a lot to be done when you set up cooking classes, which you guys found on Saturday. There's a lot of coordination. So I have to set up groups and stations to keep people moving around and keep all of their little hands busy. But it is amazing to me how the kids help each other. And I think that goes back to that one room schoolhouse before we put people in different classes and different grades. And then furthermore, where we did like homecoming and we pit every class against each other, you know.
Yeah. And in a lot of the things that we engage in homesteading and farming, when we kind of run into a place that doesn't look familiar, then we'll say, okay, let's defer to nature and see what nature tells us about the situation. So when we start talking about school, I don't know, sometimes the homeschool group, there can be problems there too, and it's a little bit daunting, but then I deferred to nature. And where in nature do you see 30 kids all the same age and one adult? And you wonder why you have just a chaotic situation, or you have a teacher that just rules with an iron fist and all the kids are petrified. But it's not a normal situation at all. And
Right.
I hope you get to see some of our tribe families that are homeschoolers and they're large families. I hope you get to interact with some of these, because there's a dynamic there that the mom just seems to hit the ground running in the morning, and then the older kids help her. They're in the garden doing things. Mom's got a baby on her, and it all seems to just flow. And from the outside, it's like, oh, how do you manage with this? And having been part of it, because we homeschooled and we've got a big family, there's 8 kids here. It just kind of happens. At the end of the day, we're tired. Everybody's fed. We go to bed, and that's it. The next day, we get up and do it again. And along the way, there's joking around, there's laughter, there's some tears, there's all those things. And all my kids stayed close. They all want to stay close to the magic that is the family.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I sent my kids to daycare, and then I sent my kids to a government school. And then, yeah, there's definitely some regrets when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. My oldest son, he went to daycare too. And then he did go to about up till 6th grade. And then we just finally said, enough of this. I had a kid that worked for me in the Air Force, and he was from Ohio, and he was going to be getting out. And I said, man, are you sure you don't want to stay in? This is not a bad deal. And he says to me, Sergeant Baker, I'm tired of working for people that are dumber than me. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, And so with the school, I thought, I'm leaving my kids here with people that are dumber than me. So that's when we decided to pull old Kyle out, and he's been homeschooled ever since. Or he's 36 now. He's a fireman and a hero and everything else. So, okay, I see a lot of similarities between the direction that you're going at your facet of this operation and the direction that we're going. Actually, there's a lot of similarities. The decentralization, that you're talking about accountability here too. You're teaching these children accountability for their actions. That's what it sounds like to me, where that's not necessarily a classroom deal. It's kind of like, well, you just do what you're told, and then it's not your fault if something goes wrong.
Right.
So we're big on that. It's your homestead. You're the head cook and bottle washer. If there's a problem, it's on you. So I see a similarity there. Let me look through some of your questions here.
Yeah, by the time they finish a semester with me, so, we start every semester saying, just try everything. I just want you to have courage so that we can build some confidence so we can become creative, right? So it's courage, confidence, creativity. And it takes courage to try new things. And so I'm really playing on this courage because, a lot of kids, oh, I'm not going to like that. Well, just have the courage to try it. Have the courage to get in the kitchen and cook something new. Have the courage to try something new. It won't hurt you. But, kids naturally want to be independent from their parents. This is why we have the parent-child struggle. So I tell parents, play on their independence. If they want to be independent, say, great, learn how to cook your own food, make your own lunches, take responsibility. Yeah. And it probably would not come off as well if it's coming from a parent as, and they're butting heads. But this is exactly how I play on them is, do you want mom to tell you what to wear? Well, then why do you want mom to tell you what to eat? And so I play on their budding, growing independence. They want to be independent. And I say, do you want variety in life? Or do you want to be like stuck doing the same old thing? Would you want to wear the same outfit for the rest of your life? No. So don't eat the same things the rest of your life. It would be boring. So these are all conversations we have in class when I say, your taste buds are just like your body is. So if you don't try something, you might be missing out. And just because you don't like it this week, you might like it next week or the following week or next month. So by the end of the semester, these kids are blowing my mind. They want to go grocery shopping. They create meal plans. They're cooking dinner I have fifth graders who cook dinner for their family. These kids are amazing. They come into class and they're like, Miss Lisa, my friend had a birthday party over the weekend and her frosting tasted like chemicals. It was purple. And I scraped it off. And I'm like, yay! That's their choice. That's them making a decision and a choice to not put chemicals in their body. By the end of the semester, I give them permission to say no, thank you. And then I tell the parents, I just want you to know your children now all have permission to say no, thank you. So if anyone tries to push unhealthy food on them, they can say, no, thank you. I can make my own food. Because sometimes in our, not so wise selves, we push food on people. Oh, but I made this for you. I made these brownies for you. Yeah. With colored sprinkles, with food dyes, with high fructose corn syrup. And the kids are like, now I got to make grandma happy and eat the brownies. Guilt. And I say, no, you don't. You can say, no, thank you. No, thank you. That's not for me. And that's empowerment. We get them to take personal responsibility to try things. And then we get them to take personal responsibility to say no, thank you to things that aren't good for them. I don't know who else is teaching them that.
As you're talking, the wheels are turning. I don't know if you can tell, but I start to see, let's say you had a school, and it was a school that was part of a farm. So the kids, part of their duties are to learn how to grow food, learn how to process food. That food goes in the storeroom. It's canned or it's frozen or whatever. And then certain students during the day, they would be on the schedule to work with, I hate to call it the lunch lady, because that was always sort of like the custodian, they were just the lunch lady, but the lunch lady would be part of the teaching staff and a very integral part of the teaching staff. She might even be the math teacher as well, because you think of all the skills that are required to put out a meal for, all the children in that school, and, the possible pride that, you guys made this, we made this, ours was better than yours, and all that stuff. It just seems like the lunch lady was just, here's a piece of pizza and a spoonful of macaroni and cheese next, but where it could have been a beautiful thing 5 days in a row.
There are some places, so I'll give a shout out to Heartfelt Impressions. I did go and give a lecture to their staff, but the owner of Heartfelt Impressions, which is a a number of daycare centers, child care centers in Lake Orion, Clarkston, Oxford area. She has gardens. And the kids go out and they plant and they pick from the gardens, and the staff there cooks meals from scratch from the gardens.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very impressive. I don't know if we're going to see that. I mean, that's a privately held child care center. I really don't know if we're going to see that in the schools. You know, we hear talk about it, but you know, the research that I've done, the school lunches really didn't get any better. You know, we heard all the propaganda, you know, last 2 presidents ago, how the school lunches were going to get better. And I don't see any evidence of that. I do see maybe they added some more apples. So they might have added another serving of sugar, you know, because packaged apples, I don't really know how much that really added to the nutritional content of the meal. But then we heard the propaganda that the kids were rebelling against the healthy food and throwing it in the garbage. But then the kids were videotaping their lunches and posting them on YouTube saying our lunches never changed.
Huh.
So there was, you know, a lot of noise. I love what you're saying. I think right now, if I can get kids to go to a farmer's market or plant something, a lot of my students, you know, in the Oxford area, we've got a lot of farmers and even, you know, quite a few homesteaders. So I got pictures from one of my families this summer. They got goats, they've got chickens, they hatched some chickens even this summer. So we have quite a few in that area who are starting to homestead and farm. And if nothing else, these kids all have a small garden. So we make tomato basil pasta. We make zoodles, and I have them, I say, well, if you are growing this at home, or look, you can just get 2 pots, put it on your patio and grow basil and grow tomatoes. And then you could make this all the time. So that's where I'm starting with that. I would like to do more along those lines. Jeff Bragg. Jeff Bragg is the potato guy. I sent him to you. I got to reconnect you guys. He's going to teach the kids how to grow potatoes, even in their house in the winter.
Yeah.
Rubbermaid bins. They can grow potatoes. And I saw Luann said something about Penny Kelly. I love Penny Kelly. I still think that, you know, the new systems coming online, I do think are going to take the rest of our lifetime. And they're going to start building slowly. And those of us that can see it will see it because we're going to be the ones creating it. But the old systems aren't coming down tomorrow. So we're going to have, you know, the old systems, new systems. But I just don't think there's going to be like, okay, new systems are here.
I think stuff is happening. Like just since we saw each other on the weekend, look what's happened. I mean, a huge thing. It's a big thing. But I put it I view it long ago, and my audience knows that I got turned on to Q way back in 17 when it first started happening. And to me, to my ears, it sounded like military intel because a lot of it didn't make sense, and it definitely wasn't directed at me, but some of it did. And so I got turned on to that. And Q said, "You're watching a movie." And so I've kind of viewed it that way. Like, it's almost like every week there's a new episode that comes out. And this week, in this week's episode, the FBI cruises down to Mar-a-Lago with 30 guys and knocks off Melania's dressing room, right? It seems like a bad movie because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But as I view it, I say, oh, gee, I wonder what's going to happen next week. Because they've painted themselves into a corner now. The FBI has. They've really painted themselves into a corner. So what are they going to do? And it looks like they're setting it up so that, you know, maybe Trump or DeSantis takes over and they be justified in doing away with the FBI. I mean, they're long overdue to be wiped off the board. So
I agree, but you got to remember we have 2 different levels of consciousness right now. Yeah. And that other level, that other group isn't going anywhere. So they're going to hold on to the educational system. Sure. You know, I've got friends of mine who are teachers. This is that cognitive dissonance. There are people, okay, I talked about the shame and guilt of a mom feeding her kids junk food. And just being able to reconcile the guilt of what did I do by feeding my kids basically poison, food with chemicals in it. Try to tell someone that their whole life has been a lie. Like,
Yeah.
this whole career of yours as a teacher in this educational system that has rewritten history, by the way.
Mm.
And I have friends I went to high school with who want to argue history with me and argue the Constitution because they're a history teacher. And I'm like, that is not my understanding whatsoever. That's frightening that you actually have a master's degree in this and you don't even understand it. And what you're saying, I completely disagree with. They're not going to let go of that system. It's not like that system is coming down tomorrow. This is where I tell my friends too. They're like, well, when is there going to be disclosure? There already is disclosure for those people who can hear it.
Yeah.
There's people who cannot and will not. They're going to go to their grave. They cannot. I just read something on the backfire effect, which has very much been ingrained in us with the propaganda. But I would just liken it to years ago. I went through a lot of therapy for the adoption issue, which if you ever go through therapy, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. And we shove a lot in there. And I used to say to admit anything was to admit everything. And because the minute you break through that cognitive dissonance and that truth comes in, it can just crack you wide open, especially if you have guilt or shame for what you didn't see or what you felt you did wrong. And so there will be people, mark my words, on this planet, they cannot see anything different that's why they're digging their heels in. And they have to be right because their psyche cannot handle them being wrong.
Yeah.
That's again why I don't try to convince anyone of anything anymore. I'm leaving a trail of breadcrumbs now for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not into trying to convince people either. It's sort of like the parable of the sower. If, we'll sow seeds, but if people are not receptive to it, okay. It's really a personal decision what direction you want to go in life. And I hear a lot of people, even in the truther community, saying my truth. And I'm not sure if I like that. I think there is the truth, and I'm not really into shades of truth. I mean, if this is true, this is not true. And if there's a little bit of this untruth in it, then it's untrue. It's like leaven in bread. It's just, there is pure truth, in my opinion. And I think we can find
it's
that.
different levels of consciousness, though. So that's what I hear now when I hear my truth. What I really hear them saying is my level of consciousness. So what I can handle.
Okay.
And so this is where I just have, trust me, I have my moments. I say I vacillate between rage and deep, deep sadness, especially when I look at the kids and I see what we're leaving them. And I feel responsible. That was my generation, was the first generation that moms went to work. I put my priority on my career and not on my family or my community.
Yeah.
And that's when things started to get swapped out on the grocery store shelves.
Yep.
And here I thought I was doing great, feeding my kids, Eggo waffles with Mrs. Butterworth in the morning. And wasn't I great because I gave them a warm breakfast?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I reclaimed my health that I started turning those labels over and I was like, what? There's no maple syrup in here. There's not one single drop of maple syrup in there.
Right.
What happened? I was like, what happened? When did this happen? And of course I could go to the shame on us because that's what I did. I said, shame on me for not paying attention. But then we do have to grieve that. And then we have to say, now what am I going to do about it? What can I do better?
Right. You rectified the situation and now you're moving in a positive direction, and that's what you can do. That's what you can do. And, I think there's an aspect to this, like we're human beings on this earth plane. I've heard it called that, and I'll go with that. We're human beings on this earth plane, but we're eternal beings. I think everybody in some way or another realizes that. And so this period of our life, like when our kids were from when they were born until they were 16 years might just be a very slim sliver and you were deceived. You were deceived. There was a lot of deception going on. Yeah, you bought it, but somebody was throwing some deception your way. And so now your fertile ground, the message has rooted in you because of what happened to you. And I'm the same way. A lot of who I am right now was created by difficult times.
Mhm.
And a lot of mistakes that I made along the way, a lot of beauties, real beauties that I've made along the way. And I'm finally getting to the place where I'm able to slow down a little bit and really make informed decisions instead of me just doing something, as I feel like at the time. I'll say, wait a minute, let me think about what I'm doing, because I have a family to consider, and then I have the tribe to consider. So like, this is probably the best part of my life right here. I'm really enjoying this part. I was telling the tribe last Tuesday. I said, I'm just electrified from the class that we had on Saturday. It was just I don't know. I just felt like we really have something here to work with, and we're putting effort into it. I know it's going to be honored, and we just need to continue to do this, and it's going to be a good thing. Nowadays, when you listen, I listened to a little bit of Fox News this morning just for the fun of it, because I want to hear what they have to say about this Mar-a-Lago thing, because
Yeah.
it's part of the story. It's fun. They're going to tell me, all the weird details. It's sort of like listening to a novel. Doesn't affect me, but it's just fun to listen to. And so I kind of put myself in a position of some of my neighbors that I see drive by. And, I shouldn't say that. Some of them listen. I don't get in their heads at all. But if you're just working a job, trying to save money, trying to get ahead, and then everything that you see around you is a total mess. And then you've got somebody like you comes along, and just an operation like cooking breakfast, there's hope in that. That's a really good thing. And I think our thing too, just the process of creating food and a lifestyle. I think our lifestyles would be very similar if we were in the same community. I think they'd be really similar. We don't have anybody in our community that's doing what you are doing, though. And
Yeah, Elena and I went to the Rogue Food Conference. We went to
Okay.
one last year, and the wheel started turning because her and I both teach classes. She teaches sprouting, fermenting, sourdough. She has a company called Sprout Bake. And then I have my cooking class, my healthy cooking classes. And then we've both been through the food development process, which that's interesting. See, there's another choke point right there. The USDA is trying to grab a hold of everyone creating a healthy food product. So they've found a couple choke points where they go, and the network of incubator kitchens is one of them. So where I saw someone in the tribe earlier said, it's not cheaper to centralize. It is when you start talking about hard assets. When you talk about a commercial kitchen, it's more cost effective to centralize because we can't all afford one.
Right.
Those are the types of centralization that I'm referring to. But Elena and I started talking after the Rogue Food Conference. We're like, she has a 300-acre farm. Her parents, she grew up a dairy farmer in Ann Arbor. And so they have all these outbuildings that aren't being used right now. And she's like, Lisa, we need to have a Rogue Food Conference here in Ann Arbor. And so we started talking to people over this past year about having a Rogue Food Conference. And she's been in communication with Joel Salatin because she wants to rehab her dad's farm. They've rehabbed part of it. They're growing hops and something else, her nephews. But he's leasing out a large portion of it right now, and they're still using all the chemicals. And so she wants to regen the farm. But she wanted to come Saturday and ended up she couldn't come. But I told her, I'm like, oh my gosh, you should have been there. And she already cans a little bit with her mom. Her mom cans meat and stuff. Like her parents are farmers, so they know all of this. But I said, Elena, we really have to hold some classes because I love getting the community together to learn. I'm a teacher at heart. I mean, I was stepping in with Rachel and setting up the stations. And I'm like, sorry, I just would like to help set up this station.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved everything. And look, I've already got books. I got some books. And I told Rachel, I said, I got these tomatillos I can't get rid of. I planted a little salsa garden a couple of years ago. These things, man, they just come back by themselves every year. They took over my whole garden.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to rip them out. And she goes, yeah, they can become invasive. So I found a recipe for chicken, salsa verde chicken. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to can them.
Well, maybe
I loved the class. I loved it.
I know. And you know what? Not this coming weekend, but the weekend after is going to be the soils class. And
I
I tell
really
you
want
what,
to come to that. If it wasn't, 8 hours of driving.
yeah. Well, if you had a camper, you could stay at the campground. And honestly, we're going to be putting some campers over there. We're going to buy camp trailers, fix them up, clean them up, and stick them over there so people can come and stay. But this guy, I can't say enough about this guy. He's how do I explain Craig Schaff? There's just no way to explain him. He gets real excited about soil, and he's going to go off on tangents here and there. You'll get so much out of it. He gives a lot of tools. I'm a prime example. Like, I'm doing pretty good on this farm, but when I got out of the service, I didn't know what to do. And then I came across this guy, and he said, do this. And I did it because he told me to. And he seemed to know more than I did. So I just do it. And then he'd say, do this and do this. And I've been going off of what he told me to do for all this time. And I made a video the other day, and I just showed the fertility of the farm. And it was raining cats and dogs. And that used to really bother me because it would wash things out and there'd be mud everywhere. And it was just not a good thing. All it did with all that rain, it just made more grass that I have to mow. Oh, no big deal. So that would be a good one to come to.
I asked Jill if it's going to be recorded because I've looked at doing Dr. Elaine Ingram's program to study the soil food web.
Yeah.
So, and I listened to Dr. Zach Bush all about bringing the microbes back. And then I connected Jill to Deanna and Kelly Lozensky from Guardian Grains. They regenerated their soil, brought the microbes back, and their grains are testing healthier. Like, they have independent lab results that there's more nutrients in their grains. And anecdotally, they have people with gluten intolerance who can tolerate their grains.
How about that?
So they have some information out of some universities on how their grains can actually help the microbiome versus the grains that are coming out of the soils with glyphosate, because glyphosate is an antibiotic. It's killing the microbes and it's killing the microbiome, but their grains are doing the opposite. So they have some independent testing. They have a lot of information on how they regenerated their soil, and they have a lot of ancient grains, and it's called Guardian Grains. And so I connected Deanna and Jill so that you can talk to them, because I think your community might be interested in learning how they did that.
Okay. Well, we've gone an hour and a half. Could I just get one more question out? And this one's from me, but could we have your take on regenerativeness? Not only regenerative farming, but regenerative health.
Yes. If I were to sum it up, I would say it's our natural state. And we need to remove the interference. And I think that's why when I started down the path, I didn't want to talk about food. or nutrition, mostly because I didn't feel like I had the qualifications. I don't have any initials after my name. But I really wanted to focus on detoxification, because what I found is that if we remove the interference, so what is we have to identify the interference. And I don't think it would be any different with rehabilitating soil in a farm as it would be our body. We have to start identifying the interference. And so for our body, it's the chemicals that are being put in food, but also personal care products. So our skin is our largest organ. And I talk to people an awful lot about what you put on your skin goes directly into your bloodstream. It's how a nicotine patch works. It's how hormone replacement cream works. It's how Asper cream works. You put it on your skin, it goes into your bloodstream. Where do you think your deodorant goes? Where do you think your body wash goes? Yeah. So I was doing full body mineral body wraps at my detox spa, and what would come out of people was like their body wash. So they'd like be sudsing up. And I'm like, that's what's in your body. That is in your body. So when I first had my first body wrap, nicotine came out. And anytime I wrapped a smoker, I could smell, I could see it because it would come out yellow, from their body, but I could also smell it. And so it really woke me up to what we're putting on and in our body. So when we touch cleaning solvents, cleaning supplies, we're absorbing that. It goes into our bloodstream.
Yeah.
So that's the interference. So look around at how much interference we have. Well, we're doing the same thing to our soil and to the earth. There's just a lot of interference. The simplest thing is for us to start removing the interference.
Real quick, like with our fields, it doesn't seem to me that they have intellect, but we do. And I feel as though I've been told since I was a little kid that, well, you live to be about 80 years old. And so, I get to 60 and it's like, 20 to go. And if you start saying that, then, 18 to go. Well, it's, you count the days and you're programming yourself to start shutting down, to stop. It seems, I can't prove this, but it seems like you're programming yourself to stop the regenerative process. I had an incident that happened a long time ago. I don't know if you ever listened to Janine, right? Tarot by Janine? No, I don't. I listened to her because Luann sent it to me. I probably would never have listened to a tarot card reader, but I just like her,
Penny Kelly is too.
Yeah, I know.
I
And I
listen
like
to Penny
her too.
Kelly. Yeah,
I
listened to a couple.
I just do. If I had a pastor, I probably wouldn't tell him that I'm doing that. But I like them, and I think they offer some good stuff. But anyway, she said that when this whole mess is over, that we will live longer, and our generation will probably go to 100, but our kids will go much further. Because just think, if science was focused on removing all those things that were intentionally put there to make us sick and die young. And so I started thinking about that. I said to a guy at the lumber yard, hey, if you had to decide in the next 5 minutes if you would want to live to be 120, would you do it? One guy said, no, I wouldn't want to. So he's basically saying, I don't like my life the way it is. I'm ready to die. Let's go. The other guy was like, oh yeah, I'd do it in an instant. And I said, how come? And he says, I have a good time every day. And he's a real simple guy, real nice guy. And I started to identify with that. And I said, yeah, I would too. I want to live longer than just another 20 years. And then as I've been thinking about it, every day I'm thinking about it, I'm starting to believe it, right?
Yeah.
I'm coming down the road in my Jeep. The sun is going down. It is a beautiful day. And I started to think, I got 88 more years.
Yep.
And I really believed it. And it was really comforting. And I said, wait a minute, am I afraid to die? No, I'm not. I'm not afraid to die. I just really like this. I like the tribe. I like the interaction. I like the people that I'm meeting. I really like having a purpose. I mean, I was a wrench turner in the Air Force. It didn't matter if I was really there or not. I mean, there were certain things, interpersonal things that mattered, but overall, no. But now I think it does. And I feel like I'm placed. I feel like I got a mission to do. I almost feel like I've said to my audience, I feel like it's a ministry, right? That it's
Yes.
necessary.
I've actually established paperwork calling Freedom Kitchen a ministry. It's a private ministry, but it is my ministry. I minister through food, through the kitchen. Yeah.
And people depend on that. They really depend on that.
So I think that's very possible. And I've come to that same realization.
Yeah.
That times are changing. And I grew up thinking I would live till I was 80, 82. I actually had a number. And my husband has helped me to see things differently. And now this newfound purpose and this new lifestyle, I think does take us well into our hundreds, 150. I saw Luann say 147. Yeah. You hear Dave Asprey say he's going to live to 150. I think he now says 170. I don't know. He might have upped his game.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the biohackers. If you listen to Ben Greenfield, Dave Asprey, any of the biohackers, they're all saying 150. Yeah, they're all fantastic to listen to. Dave Asprey started Bulletproof. I love Ben Greenfield. I just love everything he stands for. He's got some great resources. And then, I bought a detox spa. So that's what I started doing, was detoxing on a pretty regular basis. So I have a sauna here. We do the Wim Hof method. We do cold plunges. So
I do that. You know that?
Yeah. No, I didn't, but it's really good for you.
I go in the pool every morning. Every morning. We did it until after Christmas, and then it started. Until January we did it, and then we went down to Texas. When we came back, ice was, a foot thick. So, let it go. It was just laziness, really. It wasn't because it was too cold for us. But I actually, when I grew up in the 60s. There was a lot of drugs around. I tried stuff, but I didn't like it. But I was around people that were doing drugs. And I remember hearing a guy say something about chasing the buzz, right? They just wanted to get something in them to get a buzz going. And I've kind of applied that to the Wim Hof method. Once you start that and I'll drink a half a cup of coffee on my way out to the pool, sit down, go in the pool, come out, finish that cup of coffee, and it's like a very intense buzz. And then I can dive into my farm, and I'm doing the right thing too. So I'm chasing that buzz all the time. So I don't want to let my swimming in the morning go, and going carnivore for me, that was a real buzz.
Yeah,
it really was. Yeah,
I'm headed that way. I know I'm being called in that direction.
There's a guy by the name of Sean Baker. He's got this outfit
I listen to him.
Okay.
I listened to him. Yeah.
All right.
I talked to Jeremy Ayers. I had him on my last event, and Jeremy Ayers and I had a very frank conversation off the record as well. He's a naturopathic doctor and a chiropractor, osteopath over in Europe, but very insightful.
Yeah.
So I've always known that the grains bother me. So I have a lot of bloating, digestive issues, but then I get brain fog, depression, and then the joints hurt. So I've been gluten-free for 14 or 15 years. That's why working with Deanna and Kelly are rehabbing their soil, and I have been afraid to try their grains. So they sent me their pasta and their grains because I said, I'll try it, because I believe there's got to be some truth to that you've got the microbes back in the soil, and the grain has to be better. But I've just been grain-free because it has caused me inflammation, digestive issues. But who knows if that was the gluten, or if, that was glyphosate poisoning. And the gluten was just guilty by association, which I've always said that. Like, we don't really know at this point. Are we intolerant to the wheat or the gluten, or are we intolerant to glyphosate? And our body is just rejecting it because it comes together as a package deal.
Yeah.
Hard to know because we haven't had regenerative grains to try.
That's true. That's true. And glyphosate, they've changed the usage of glyphosate in the last 10 years. They've changed it. They've reclassified it as a pesticide, and then they're spraying it on grain, letting the grain die out in the field, and they let it dry in the field, so it saves them money on. But every one of those kernels was soaked down with glyphosate.
Yep.
So.
Isn't that disgusting?
It is.
I'm working with, Jeff Bragg. He's an agronomist, potato farmer, and talking about the different chemicals. So he was telling me what Agent Orange is, the name of the chemical. And he's like, you know where it's found most commonly now? I said, no, where? He said, your residential weed and feed. That
Really?
weed and feed that everyone puts on their yard?
Yeah.
It's got Agent Orange in it.
I'm not surprised. It's a defoliant.
We know it's still in our water. We know it's in, when they test the cord blood of babies, they're finding Agent Orange in the cord blood of newborn babies. So we know it's still in use.
Yeah.
He said it's in weed and feed.
Yeah.
I said, oh my God, my husband uses weed and feed. I wish he wouldn't. I say, let the weeds grow. They feed the bees. I put a pollinator garden in, and I got some, volunteer weeds. They got some pretty nice flowers on them, some nice ornamental grasses. He's like, are you going to pull those? I go, no, the bees seem to like them. The bees and the butterflies.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving them.
Well, that's another thing where I think we've been led astray. It's like certain things are weeds and certain things are not. Oh, don't eat that purslane, but eat that iceberg lettuce, so.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just interviewed Jeff Bragg, and he's like, here's some purslane. And he goes, this came in the field with my potatoes. He goes, now we would have been convinced that this was a weed. He goes, but this is a delicacy in Mexico. They serve this in salads.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes, we've been led astray. Luann would like my information. You can go to lisajendza.com, and there's a contact form. That's probably the easiest way to reach out and contact me. And also Freedom Kitchen Kids. And if you want to see Mark, we did a 4-part docuseries on kids and food, which was awesome. It's a lot of work. And it's at freedomkitchensummit.com. And I left it up just a little bit longer. I'm working on my next event for October.
Yeah, I really missed out on a lot of good stuff. As I said at Saturday, my email is like a forest, and a lot of times I just disregard it. So if you need to get a hold of me, you ring the phone, and I'm over 50, so I just answer the phone. Hello. Yeah, I don't look at it. I just answer it. And you have my phone number now, don't you? Okay.
I do. I hate calling people, though, because I don't want to interrupt people. So I'm like, so when am I going to text you? Like, you need to connect with Deanna, but Jill already got that email, and you need to connect with Jeff Bragg, and trying to remember who else I sent your way. So maybe I'll just, if I don't hear back from someone in email, I'll send you a text and say, check your email.
Okay. If that's how we're going to do it, then I'm going to get a text to check my email.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. But if I'm going to connect you to somebody, then I want to do an introduction in email so that you have each other's email.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was a great interview. I appreciate you taking the time to come on our show and meet with our folks. And I really hope we can do some damage into the future. I really do. It's a lot of fun.
I would love that. You have such a great community. I was just checking out more of the comments. I hope we didn't miss any questions, you guys, but you can email me. Just go to lisajendza.com, fill out the contact form, and I will get your message and get back to you.
Okay. All right, then. Good night, everybody. And Lisa, I'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm going to end the stream.